And good morning, everybody. It's Monday, November 16th, and this is Doc. And we are going to do a brief screencast about Napoleon. The test on Napoleon is due right about now, so this is a little review about some facts about Napoleon and why he's important. Napoleon was not born in France. He was born in Corsica, and he was the son of a minor government official. He developed quickly an interest in France and saw himself much more as French than Corsican. And he served in the French army and went to France, where his career really took off because he is an amazingly effective general. He did make some mistakes, but he is an amazing general, probably the greatest general in all of history. So two reasons that he rose to power. One, he saw an opportunity and he had a tremendous belief in himself. He believed that he could do any task set before him, and he really thought that he was the answer to the problems that France was going after the Reign of Terror and after the Directory was very weak. So two reasons: he had a great ego, and he was very competent, and the French National Directory was very weak and all over the place. They just couldn't make up their mind. There had been too much turmoil since 1789. He did make some mistakes militarily, and we'll talk about them in brief later on too, possibly. One was he launched a war against Spain, which was very costly and difficult to navigate because of the mountainous terrain of the Pyrenees. This bogged him down and was a tremendous disappointment, and had a lot of use of resources and time. Eventually he did take over Spain, but it was a mistake. The biggest mistake he made was attacking Russia. Russia was not an enemy, really. They were just not being as cooperative as he liked, and they were starting to become very friendly with Great Britain, which Napoleon did not like. He did not expect the Russians to fight the way they did. They basically scorched the earth behind them and left nothing for the French army to use. And he made it all the way to Moscow, the capital, but the government had left. They had pretty much destroyed the city. And Napoleon had conquered the country pretty much, but had nothing to show for it. He turned around and went home, and his army suffered horribly during the Russian winter in that retreat, and really never was the same. A couple of areas that Napoleon was not in line with the views of the Enlightenment. In one way he was, a very important way. He believed in equality before the law and in rising because of your merit. So those are two big factors that he really stressed of the Enlightenment and the idea of equality. 11 of his 13 greatest generals were commoners. That had never happened before. Almost always that had been reserved for the aristocracy, even if they were idiots in the battlefield. That made the French army very efficient. Another area that was important was he had the idea of equality before the law, and it would be written. He rewrote the legal code, and it applied through much of Europe when he conquered most of Europe. Two areas that he was not in view was he did allow slavery in the Caribbean. And France had gotten rid of the practice, but he said it could go on again. That was obviously a mistake. The other one was that he did not give suffrage to women. The revolution hadn't done that. It was moving toward it, but then it stopped. Societally, people were just not ready for the idea of full suffrage. On the other hand, he did promote more access to democratization. So his idea that he didn't give women suffrage is really kind of like the whole view of the world at the time. I'm not saying it was right, but it was not in view with some of the Enlightenment. But most had not gone that far. They saw equality, but maybe not in that area. It was a bit of hypocrisy. That was worldwide. So the Congress of Vienna basically is an organization that was designed basically to prop up the monarchies of Europe and stop the ideals of the French Revolution and stop Napoleon, who saw himself fulfilling the French Revolution by bringing about law and order, and especially equal before the law, to the masses of Europe and getting rid of the aristocracy, even though Napoleon, in a way hypocritically, declared himself emperor. Napoleon was not a big fan too much of democracy. He believed that you want capable, competent people to be there and rise from the ranks of the people based on merit, not just because of their birth. But he was not always in favor of direct democracy, other than plebiscites. Plebiscites basically is when you go directly to the people, and it's a pure majority situation on yes or no on a certain item, and Napoleon did use them frequently. An area that made Napoleon very popular with the people was that he stopped the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church. Napoleon was not very religious himself, but he realized that the people liked their religion and needed their religion. And he decided not to go against the church like the earlier parts of the revolution had. And most people welcomed this. Roman Catholicism was the religion that most people, even though they believed in the ideals of the revolution, it had been their belief system since birth. Napoleon gained power basically by a coup. He used a small group of the army to march in the National Assembly and basically declare himself the ruler of France. And so he used this by commitment of the military to him and the weakness of the French National Assembly. And most people stood by it. They realized things were a mess. So he saw the opportunity, seized the reign, and then as he won battles and made France more powerful, his power increased and he eventually became emperor and he put the crown on himself. One of the things that was also very popular about Napoleon is that he evened out the tax burden on people. People paid an inordinate amount of taxes compared to the wealthy, and he basically had a more equitable system that it was that people paid the same percentage of their taxes. So the wealthy were paying a lot more taxes, but percentage-wise they were paying about the same. It's a little bit different than our modern tax system of a graduated tax, which basically taxes, the more wealth you have, you're taxed at a higher rate. Napoleon kept the rates even, but it did have an idea of raising revenue and also of making it fairer and more equitable. Meritocracy is the idea that we talked about a few times, that you rise based on your ability. And that means if you are successful, if you know how to do your job, you rise. If you don't, you fall. And obviously he got a lot of great people who had been in the bourgeoisie able to go into government service and other types of service. So this was a great boom to the French economy and the morale of the French people and to the overall efficiency of the French government and military. One of the things that he's questioned about is why sell Louisiana, the Louisiana territory, for $3 million, which was a lot of money back in the day. Basically speaking, Napoleon was not concerned about the United States or the Western Hemisphere. He wanted his concentration of power in Europe. He believed in maximizing efforts on a fixed point, and he saw the Louisiana territory as not the future of France. Obviously, this helped out the Americans, and it probably saved a big problem because America was going to expand and it would have created conflict. So that's really about it. The Congress of Vienna basically was successful in containing the French Revolution and France. The Congress of Vienna was one thing. It was against the French Revolution, the ideals of equality and meritocracy in particular, because these were powerful people who had risen because they were aristocrats. And they basically saw Napoleon as a real threat. Napoleon said it's because I am the embodiment, I am the fulfillment of the French Revolution. And in some ways he was, in some ways he wasn't. He's not a perfect representative of the French Revolution. Certainly he's not a perfect human being, but no one is. But he was a darn good representation of many of the ideals of the French Revolution, which scared the daylights out of the aristocracy and those invested in power. The Congress of Vienna basically was able to contain France and Napoleon and contain the French Revolution for a while. Later on, revolution spread through the rest of Europe. So that's it for today. I hope this helps you, and I think what you should do is hopefully you watch this and then maybe take your test, because I took a lot of this review from the test questions. It's not a direct quote, but it gives you the ideas that are going to be brought on your test. Have a great day, and I'll try to do this again tomorrow, or definitely a few times this week and throughout the year.